lawfullyoursweddingchapel.com to learn more and schedule a tour.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Lisa and Robyn are two fun friends diving deep into conversations where nothing is taboo. They believe in eating dessert before dinner and wearing the bikini. They're allergic to labels, authority, and cheap shoes. Currently, they're launching themselves through life being the good time, bold enough to take risks and inquisitively asking, what's next? They hail from New Hampshire, but they could be anywhere dressed in cute clothes. If they had to share a tombstone, it would read, "Curiosity killed these cats." Your hosts, Lisa and Robyn on the mic.
Welcome back to Lisa and Robyn on the mic. I am so out of breath from running to the bathroom. You are listening on WSMN 1590 AM 95.3 FM. You can watch, stream, and listen on WSMN.live as well as YouTube. And we are up, if you can't catch us live, on Spotify and everywhere you find your favorite podcasts.
And we're back.
So my first memory of reading that really sits in my brain is this is how young I am. I want my father to read me Dr. Seuss books. Big reader, my dad. And he reads maybe 3 pages of Pop on Hop. Pop,
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm not reading this garbage. He takes out The Count of Monte Cristo.
Wow.
And reads me a page from The Count of Monte Cristo.
They're not messing around, your parents.
Oh. They're adults. I don't think they ever remembered they were never children. They were adults. And this is a meaty story, right? And I'm in this section, pretty much at the beginning of the book, and I am interrupting him, peppering him with questions because I am this story is amazing, but it's also adult.
Yeah. And how old were you?
What age do you read Dr. Seuss?
Oh, you're preschool, 4.
Right. 4 or 5 years old. I'm going to give myself 5, maybe. Pretend 5. Because I could read these books on my own.
But, yeah, okay.
But I wanted, what do you want to read? Well, these are the books that I read on my own. So I pull out the book, and he's like, I ain't reading this. Yeah. And I'm not reading this. So we read this. And then my mother's yelling, because, my bedroom is off the kitchen. And then she's like, you two are still up? She's supposed to be sleeping. She has school tomorrow. And we are knee-deep into The Count of Monte Cristo.
He's probably getting such a thrill out of sharing this with you and seeing how interested you are.
Right.
And think about all the vocabulary, right?
It's in another language, practically.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's adult topics, too.
Talk about quality conversation.
Right. So, and my dad, like I said, he wasn't a laugh out loud type person. But he was deep and intense, and I learned as an adult, probably over 30 years old, maybe even almost 40, that my father didn't even go to high school because he had to work and start contributing to help his family of 5.
Oh, my goodness.
And this was back.
Yeah.
He would have been how old now? He would have been 85.
Okay.
So, different times.
It's in the 50s.
Yeah, and
50s.
his sisters had told me, because I didn't know that. He didn't say.
To be that level of intelligence.
He used to read physics books and statistic books.
He didn't even need to go to high school.
I don't think he did.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't think he did. And I think he would have been bored. My poor dad would have been very bored.
It based on what you're saying.
And
let's just bypass that.
My aunts told me the story that the editor for the paper knocked on the door because my father was writing letters to the editor. And he said, I want this man to write for our paper.
Oh, my gosh.
And my aunts were like, he's 15. And he's working as a shipper.
Yeah.
He's putting boxes together for food products to ship out the door.
Yeah.
He's not going to come work for your paper. He's, that. But that's how, his love of language and his love of literature. But, he used to read for fun The Count of Monte Cristo, those types of books, the Confederacy of Dunces. But he would also read physics book and statistics, and it had to have a practical application. He didn't read that much fiction, but what he did read of fiction was more like literature fiction, where I will read the trashy novel all day.
Janet Ivanovich.
I don't read her.
Oh, I started that. For
Do
a
you like
while.
her?
I did when I first started. I don't know why. I don't know why that popped up to me.
Yeah. So it's really funny because we talked about how there was no young adult really.
Yeah.
But as an adult, I have read young adult. I've read the Harry Potter series.
I've never read that.
Yeah, it's.
I feel
I
like-
remember reading it
Yeah.
because my friend's daughter. It was her age, and those were the books she was reading, and I wanted something to talk about with her. Plus, I want to know what they're reading because I read Flowers in the Attic about
Right.
incestual sister siblings in the attic. I was just making sure.
I actually never now that you're mentioning it. Yes, like I don't think I ever picked up on it.
Those V.C. Andrew books.
That's what it was. I never read the book. I think I only watched the movie.
And you
It's
can
scary.
still see the picture of the kids on the front cover. Right? So,
Talk about yeah.
so I
That's
think it's my experience of, well, let's see
Yeah.
what you're reading.
Yeah.
But just not because there's anything wrong with it,
Mm-hmm.
even if it is, you're reading about whatever.
Yeah.
But let's talk about it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. So, and I'm a reader.
Yeah.
How else would I connect? You're reading this, I'll read. And so I started to read the Harry Potter, and I think I was probably like 2 chapters in, and I was like, God, to have this when you were a kid, when your imagination is, when the real world hasn't tamped down what real world is, and you still have that magical, fantastical imagination.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, and you're like, God, this is amazing for
Yeah.
these kids to have this series, you know? And then I read Twilight.
Oh yeah.
And
I read that.
Yeah, it's Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah. I loved it.
I really enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
Yeah. I mean, I took it for what it was. I mean,
Yeah.
I could see the corniness in it
Yes.
and like the far-fetchedness, but
But it was
kinda
just
liked
Romeo
that.
and Juliet.
Yeah.
It's just, forbidden love, in a vampire way.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you throw vampires at everything.
Yeah.
So I really have this whole thing where I interact in the world through the written word, really. And so I have this question for you. Does the dyslexia centers, do they help teenagers, or is it
Yeah.
just for a certain age bracket?
So it's all ages. So I got my training as a Orton Gillingham teacher and dyslexia specialist and Orton Gillingham teacher trainer through Fairleigh Dickinson University.
Okay.
in
And
New
now when
Jersey.
you're saying those words, is that a label of something, or is that a type of teaching?
It's a type of teaching. So Orton Gillingham is an approach used, most commonly used. It's a structured, explicit teaching approach using multisensory, getting all those senses in there, and it's a widely used, a respected approach for teaching students with dyslexia. And I was a classroom teacher in I taught grades K through 3 throughout my career, but I spent most of the time in first grade, and you're really getting into reading instruction, formal reading instruction there. And I thought I was doing a good job, but like I said earlier, like I don't ever remember learning how to read. Like it just came naturally to me. So I didn't have difficulty with it. So when I was a new teacher, and also like in college, I don't remember taking a course on if I did, it was general. Like I remember taking a course on physical science and different things, but I don't remember taking an actual course on phonics, how to teach somebody to read using phonics, like phonemic awareness, all the things I was talking about, like syllable types and decoding and segmenting sounds. Like I don't remember learning that as a teacher.
I remember this. I
And
remember I before E except after C, or when sounding like way, like neighbor and way.
Right. So some of those things,
I
right?
remember that.
But there was no specific course like really getting into this nitty gritty. So like when I was a new teacher, I'm teaching all the subjects, whatever, and you basically, I'm opening my teacher manual, whatever reading series we were using, and it was like, okay, day 1, you're gonna say it's pretty much scripted, and then I would pick, obviously I had some skills or my own intuition that would tell me what to do, but. And we were doing well. The kids were learning everything, doing great. But I remember one year, I had like this little boy in my class, and he was fabulous. He kind of fit this profile of having difficulty with these decoding. Like he just wasn't getting it, despite unexpected. Like he was fabulous. He was a fabulous kid, different kid from the one I described earlier. And I was like, I'm not helping. I'm not something I was taking a person like on myself. Like, I'm a teacher. It's not his fault. Like, he's doing all the things. He's participating. He's earnest. He's got some skills. They're there. It's not like he wasn't. But I was like, I'm missing something. So I became interested in going deeper with my knowledge as a reading teacher. I was like, I have to be missing something. So I started researching different things. I was kind of thinking about going back to school at that time. I have my master's in administration and supervision, but I haven't really used that to that effect. I like being with the students. That would probably take me too far away of working directly with the students. So I was like, I know I'd like to do something. So I started thinking, okay, I'm going to go back and I get a reading specialist. I'm, going to get a master's in reading or things like that. So I started investigating things, and I was looking at the coursework that was listed. And I was like, okay, it's kind of general. No, I'm not, being a reading specialist is amazing. But for me, I was like, that's kind of general. I was actually looking for something more specific. And as I was researching this, I stumbled upon this program, dyslexia specialist through Fairleigh Dickinson. I was like, what is this? So I looked it up, and I was like, it had really specific things on phonics and decoding and comprehension. And so I reached out to my superintendent and principal, and I was like, I want to go back to school, and I found this program. Make a long story short, they're like, oh my gosh, we have been looking into that, and our school in New Jersey got a grant, and they selected 6 teachers. I was lucky enough to be one of them. And Fairleigh Dickinson provided a practicum instructor in Orton Gillingham to come to the school and work with these 6 teachers over a course of 2 years to become a certified Orton Gillingham teacher. So we were instructed in that structured literacy, multisensory approach to teaching kids how to read, and it really broke down everything. It's like the structure of the English language. So you're learning what syllable types are. You're teaching explicitly those vowel teams and where they're placed in words. You're teaching morphology and meaning units, like what happens when you add prefixes and suffixes, the difference between those concepts, the difference between a base word and a root word, how a root word can't stand alone unless you have things built to it. Syntax, like order of words and sentences, meaning pieces, not just morphology, but, vocabulary and synonyms, antonyms. Like, there's so much to it.
When you talk about multi-sensory, is it, instead of looking at words on a page, they're holding objects?
That's a great question. So multi-sensory, I'll give an example. So students with dyslexia, they sometimes, like, people think, they're, see the letters backwards, or looking at things, the letters are jumping out of the page. I've heard a couple of different things. It's not a visual issue. It's there's nothing wrong with the way they see. I mean, they may need glasses, but nothing wrong with the way they see the words. But it is a phonological, it's a sound symbol issue. So, for example, I'll use the like AI, right? Okay. So, or a short A sound, right? Thinking of the little kids. So the child they'll hear you say ah, right? Okay, ah, but they can't associate that A. It says ah. Or they'll see A on a page, but they can't bring up that short vowel sound. Or a vowel team, two vowels working together to make one sound, like AI, right? Those get a little bit harder, So they'll see, what is a way to spell? I'm saying long A. I'm saying the sound of A. How do we spell that as a vowel team? So they can't bring up AI, that symbol, that sound symbol relationship. So when you're teaching a student with explicit instruction using that multisensory approach, you're specifically telling them, it's kind of giving them like a guided discovery. So let's see, I'll give you an example. Like maybe I'm teaching that AI. They don't know that vowel team, they don't know that sound. So I might say something like that. Okay, you already know a lot of vowel teams already. You already know that AY says A, you already know EE where it says E. So today we're going to learn another vowel team. And then you go, so you're kind of pumping them up, you're prepping them, that guided discovery. And then you're saying, listen to these 3 words. So first starting with that auditory piece. Okay, I'm going to say 3 words. Rain, stain, wait. And they're listening. You might have them repeat. What do you hear? What do you hear in those words that's the same? And if they don't get it, you're going to keep guiding them through it. Oh, yeah, I hear A. Is that a long sound? Is that a short sound? Oh, it's a long sound. Where do you hear it in the words? And they're not seeing it all. It's all here, auditorily, phonological, that phonological piece. So there's your auditory. Oh, yeah, it's in the middle. Okay, so now we get to the visual piece. So now you're like, oh, here are the three words you just saw. You're going to have a picture, Okay, here's the word rain. You might have a picture of
The drops.
raindrops, right? And look, there's 2 letters, AI, are working together in the middle of that word to say A, that long sound of A, and then you'll show them the next, and you have that visual prompt. And while you're doing that, while you're telling them, you're telling them directly, like your direct instruction, this is a vowel team. These 2 letters work together, make a long sound. And then you have a kinesthetic and tactile element. So they're tracing, they're saying it, and you're constantly giving them eliciting questions. So you might have them trace right on a card, you might have them trace in sand or bumpy, give it that tactile, and they're tracing. AI says A, and everything's kind of done in 3s. AI says A, and you're constantly asking these eliciting questions, almost till it almost sounds like ad nauseum, but it's that repetitive piece, and you're like, okay, what sound does AI make when it comes together? A, right? And it's a vowel. What? It's a vowel team. And what's a vowel team? 2 vowels working together make one sound, and then so you're getting all of that, and then you're going to do a phonological awareness activity with it. So they might be working without the words in front of them. And again, you're going to say words, and they might segment. So you're going to say the word stain, right? And they might be pushing like a little chip up to segment the sounds. S, t, a. And you might point, oh, where do you hear the A?
Okay, so there's like a board, and then they
or
move it around?
It doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Okay.
Nothing fancy. You could just pull little chips, or they could make
Or like
X's.
Scrabble letters?
Yeah. They could you could have a whiteboard, and they could be making X's like S, T, A, right? Oh, erase the X that has the A. Where do you hear it? Oh, what letters would you use if you were going to spell the AI? And then you're going to get into reading words. All the words on the word list. It's a targeted word list. They're only going to have those AI. So you're not
So
giving
you're not
them
throwing any.
No, it's direct and explicit. And then they're going to spell words with A. And so this is a very powerful, two very powerful tools that they seem simple, but until I started learning this approach, I didn't have those in my teacher toolbox. And one is finger spelling. So when they go to spell the word, like rain, you're going to say, I say to the kids, okay, so they have their pencil in one hand and they have their other hand free. And I say to them, okay, I'm going to throw this word to you, and you're going to pretend to catch it in your hand, and you're going to let out each sound starting with your thumb. So I'll say rain, and they're going to go, rain. Okay, good. Let me hear all the sounds. R, A, N. So those fingers are still there, right? So if they have them out, they're there. And so they can think, oh, on my thumb it says R. Okay, what letter says R? Say and write R. R, and they write an R. A. A. Oh, yeah, that's that vowel team. How are we going to spell that vowel team? They're putting AI and then N. And we're spelling out those words like that. And then the other thing is when they're reading that word list, and this can be brought up at any time, this is a kinesthetic piece too. The methodology is if they make a mistake, the first go-to would be it's called trace and say. Mm-hmm. So they're reading, I'll use the word rain again. So they're reading the word rain, they mess up, they say ran, whatever. Ooh, let's look at that word, trace and say. So that kinesthetic piece, as they're tracing that letter, it brings it up to the brain. So it's amazing how it works, but it does. It's like they go, and then they start tracing, they say and, but they start tracing that AI, poof, it comes back. Rain.
So that's so interesting.
Those are all those multi-sensory components.
Pieces, yeah.
So yeah,
So
and it's done kind of in a explicit in a sequence. There's a rhyme or reason for why we're doing it.
And I'm thinking of Catholic school. You said it, you read it, and you wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought this is so boring, repetitive, but it was touching people who learned, who needed the auditory piece. It's almost like it touched it a little bit.
Yeah. They were onto something.
They were onto
Yeah.
something.
Sometimes there's an old school method.
Yeah. But that's really interesting. When COVID hit, I noticed a lot of kids talking to parents and grandparents and everybody that their children who were born during that time period where there was masks. There was a lot of difficulty in children learning to speak. They were delayed speakers.
Because they couldn't see the mouth formation, the articulate. We call that articulatory gestures.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I had said at the time, I didn't realize how deaf I am, except that if someone has a mask, I can almost not hear them.
Right. Oh,
Or
and
understand them.
I wear glasses. I have terrible vision. So I say that. I was like, oh, I can't hear you. I don't have my glasses on.
Yes.
I'm like, what? I'm like, no. I can see your lips. I got to see. So
And
same as the mask.
I had never considered that until it went away. And then people would literally, I would say, I can't see your lips. I can't hear what you're saying.
Oh my gosh.
Because I don't realize I'm not reading lips by any stretch of the imagination, but I need both cues.
Yeah. So that's part of that multisensory. You hear it, you're seeing it, and the lip movement is part of that kinesthetic.
Yeah. But I don't need it for like a podcast or an audio book, which is interesting. But, and that is at the time when all these people were telling me these kids were having all these problems, and there was like delayed, real concern that these kids are going to be delayed by such an amount. You know, if you're not learning to speak by 2.
Yeah. Well, that is.
Yeah, that's
that is
part
a
of that
concern.
window opening
Yeah. And
in
that is
the brain that we're talking about.
things to look for, like when you have little red flags, like if they're a delayed speaker.
Yeah.
You know.
So because I'm a book person, when I have my nephews, and I used to have the book open, and I used to when they're so young, they're not going to read the words with you. But that's not what the book is for. You use a book for a year, the same book. But you're saying words for pictures on a page. That's what I used to do. So I used to say, where's the rainbow? Rainbow. And you really articulate the word, and you can see them searching.
Right.
But it starts with you pointing to all the pictures. You're not even using the story.
Nope. It's that's exposure. It's part of labeling, thinking about concepts of print.
Yeah. So when you first have them in your lap, you're pointing rainbow and cloud and grass, and you're doing all these things. And then at some point it becomes their turn. You just say the word, and they tell you where that is. And then eventually there'll be the word rainbow somewhere on this page. So you can use the same kid's book. And that's why I really liked those board books, because they survived small hands.
Yeah.
But there was this other book series that I loved for my nephews, and I will find it and then talk about it next week on the show. I used to get them at a BJ's or a Costco. They were a kid's book. And you opened it, and there was an origami.
Oh, yeah, the pop-ups.
Pop-up
books. Yeah. I love
My
those.
nephews destroyed them because they would grab them, but they love them. And I'm wondering if that's not like that
Kinesthetic
piece where, there's the shark. He blooms out of the page as a shark. And I thought those books were genius.
They have books now that my grandson has. They're like, oh gosh, of course I can't think of the name of it, but they're tactile. It's like there's little it's called, he loves this one. There's a series, Never Touch a Dinosaur, Never Touch this. And on each page they have like bumpy pieces, or that they get different textures.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, how cool.
And my nephew, I have one nephew that loves trucks. So we bought him the book that you press on the picture of the type of vehicle, and it makes a sound.
Yeah.
So I think they've incorporated some much of this.
Yeah, some of the research.
Yeah, into the research is making its way into just general.
Into children's books.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It is. Yeah.
Oh.
Listen, there's so much.
I know, there's so much. And I think that it's first of all just figuring out what's happening.
So like in the real young children.
When we went to the top of the hour, we were going to talk about you said when I became a teacher.
Yeah. So, whenever I teach you.
And if that pops up, we can bring that back up too. But go ahead.
But yeah, I think when not really understanding that, not knowing what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then when I when I had that student in my class, that kind of motivated me to look further. And then I found the Orton Gillingham teacher program through Fairleigh Dickinson, and I was lucky enough to be part of that cohort. The reason why it's there's a little difference between like being certified, an Orton Gillingham certified teacher, or just trained. Not that there's anything against training, but when you become a certified through the International Dyslexia Association or another accredited program, you have done. It's clinical, so you have put in. I can't tell you how many hours, maybe 100 hours. I forget how many hours in the program, working directly with a student. So you have we had two students that we would be assigned to throughout any grade, depending on so it starts off at like a level 1 with young, and then it goes all the way up to 4, so you could have high school students in that level, middle school, high school. But we'd have one student that we tutored for first hour, 4:30 to 5:30, and then the next student came, and we'd have to write lesson plans, very detailed lesson plans, using that Orton Gillingham approach, making sure all the components were in there. And we had a practicum instructor from kind of guiding us through and leading us through. Like we had observations, and she would say what we did well, what we didn't do well, what we could improve upon. So the certified Orton Gillingham teachers, like if somebody has a student at home that is struggling with reading, and maybe they're showing some signs, maybe they're not officially diagnosed, but you want to get them some help, going on that IDA website and looking for Orton Gillingham certified teachers is going to be your best bet, because
Can you spell that for them? Can you spell the
Orton
yeah.
Gillingham? Okay, so ORTON, Orton, from Samuel Orton. He was a neuroscientist, and he coined the term. Before it was dyslexia, he used to call it word blindness.
Ah, okay.
So and then Anna Gillingham, Gillingham. Okay. I think I spelled it right. She was also a psychologist, I believe, and a teacher, and so she had some strategies. So they teamed up, I think it was back in the 30s, and that's where it began, from those two professionals, and that's where we get the name from. But it is this explicit, systematic approach using those multisensory components to break things down in clear, concise language, and it builds on one another. Like there's a scope and sequence. There's a system to it. So like you're not going to teach the student AI before they know something short A, or maybe an easier vowel team like AY or something like that.
Yeah.
So it comes together,
So
and you're not going to jump into like throwing some suffixes on the end of a word if they don't have the concept of a base word, or they're not reading some of those simpler words.
Yeah, so it has a very specific structure about what is working in building blocks, and that's a scaffolding piece.
Totally, yeah. And then it's one of the another key aspect of it is very prescriptive and diagnostic. So, and it's meant to be, not meant to be, but like in a one-on-one setting. So because they need intensive instruction, so you're going to get more out of one-on-one. But you can, like a classroom teacher who's trained in these techniques, this approach, can totally use it in the whole class as they're introducing something. I used to always do it. So the approach has these is that multisensory component where you're introducing things in that way, addressing all that auditory, phonemic pieces, and so it's very prescriptive and diagnostic, like I was saying. So as I'm as I'm working with a student, you're taking massive notes. Like, okay, where did they make their mistakes? So the next day or the next time you meet with them, it's not like you're opening like a manual and be like, okay, I'm on week 3, day 2, I'm teaching this. It's all individualized, and it's based on how they perform during that lesson. So it's like, okay, they need help with this concept. We taught it 2 weeks ago. They're still having trouble. That's going to stay in review. They're still making these errors in this spelling pattern. That's going to stay in review. And then you kind of look at what's going to move them forward the most. And you think about like, okay, I just taught them AI, so I'm not going to teach them another vowel team next time. That's going to be too confusing. Maybe I'll teach them a concept of a base word, and maybe one of the sounds of ED. So rained, ED says duh at the end. So, so they can still practice that and put that in.
And there's no are hardly ever, I don't think there's any O, where there's just a D without the E when you're adding it at the end.
At the end,
so they
right.
can't make the mistake. It's almost the repetitive of always being right.
And you're
in that
teaching them
particular
like rain. I mean, there's so much too. Like ED, for example, ED has 3 sounds. Like these are things I didn't know. I knew they had 3 sounds, but why? I didn't know why. So at the end of ED can say id, usually after a word that ends with a T or a D, like hunted or landed. And we say id, not ed, because you want fluency. So fluency should sound like you're speaking. It doesn't mean fast. So you're teaching them the way it sounds, like that schwa sounds. Like if you're teaching them, it says ed, they start reading the bird landed on, so it becomes that's disfluent, like they're not reading it. So you're teaching them id, landed, hunted after a T or D. If the word is rain, you put your hand on your throat. N is a voiced sound. Can you feel your voice? So after a voice sound, the ed sounds like a d, rained. So you say, oh, do you hear a voice or unvoiced? If you put your hand on your throat and you say a word like check, CK is an unvoiced sound, so the ed is going to sound like a t. Checked.
So
I
interesting.
know, there's just like a lot of that's just like something that popped into my head. But again, I didn't know these things.
Right.
I mean, when we had 2 years of it, so 4 semesters. And when I was in the Orton Gillingham teacher training program, I was like, the first semester, I was like, oh my gosh, like I kind of went into this like, this is not going to be that hard. I'm already a teacher. I teach reading. I also have a degree in special ed. I'm like, I went in there. I'm like, oh my gosh, like there were so many details and facets to it, and things like I just didn't know the rules of things, And by the second semester, I feel like all of us were like, oh my gosh, how did we ever teach reading without knowing this?
Yeah.
And it just opens up a whole new world. And when I became an instructor myself, and I was working in a cohort with the teachers, every time by the second semester, once things kind of sunk in a little bit, second or third semester, they're like, oh my gosh, this has helped me so much in the classroom and, with my own knowledge. So, it's been really eye-opening.
Yes.
And I think
that's
back
amazing.
like, wow,
And, so
and it's still, you've got to be a lifelong learner. Like I am by far an expert on it. I'm still learning, and we're required to, as Orton Gillingham teachers, we're required to continue. I think we need 30 hours of continued education to keep our certification. So I'm always taking workshops. Fairleigh Dickinson's great. They provide, we have to pay for them, but they or a course. I might take a course now and then. I've taken things more than once. Like I have something that I want to take again because I took it like 4 or 5 years ago,
and then you learn other things,
I'm like,
and then you probably
maybe this will make more sense,
Yes.
or I can pick something else
Yeah.
up from it. So I'm going to take that same. If it's really a workshop, I'm going to take that same workshop again.
So I do think it's interesting because our poor listeners know how much I love technology and I hate it.
Oh yeah,
So
I'm not I'm not a troubleshooter. If something goes awry, I freak out. I'm like, I don't know.
I'm at the stage now, if the remote and the sound bar don't turn on at the same time, I'm not watching television. I'm not troubleshooting that. I don't care enough.
Yeah,
I
can't figure it out.
I'll go read a book.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, it was maybe 10 or 12 years ago. I don't know what years ago. It doesn't matter. But I had read a study about how few books are in how there are so many households that children under 6 do not have books inside their home.
Yeah, and that plays a huge role, because in emergent literacy, you're talking about those like pre-reading skills, or the skills that children should be exposed to before they get to that formal instruction. Usually formal reading instruction starts in let's say kindergarten. But even before they enter preschool, like to talk and read to your child exposes them to that oral language component. And if that's not being done at home, maybe they don't have the resources, they don't have books, that they're exposing them to, they're coming a little bit behind, when they get to school. So
And like we talked about with that the brain turns on and opens up best windows of time to do things.
Yep.
So that made me really sad, just because as an only child, books were my friends. These authors were my friends. I felt like I had a connection to people that I never met because of this written word or this story. It was, I cannot emphasize enough how much reading is integral to my life. And when I first got into audiobooks, I had a very difficult time because I loved reading so much.
I'm at that stage right now.
So what I learned was I have to like the voice.
Yeah.
Right. That's one thing.
Yeah.
I have to like, that's 50% of it. And the other thing is fiction stories, I have a harder time, but nonfiction, I have less of a hard time.
Okay.
For some reason.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe because I think it reminds me of a classroom.
Okay.
Where you're being
you're
lectured to.
Yeah, you're learning information.
So I know the library has free audiobooks, but what I loved is I remember one of my tenants, she was in her 90s and her eyes were going enough, but she used to love to read. And she had said, you know, I'm lost without my books.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, try listening. You might not like every author, every person reading it, but one of my favorite, so I give this as the first audible that might make you fall in love with reading.
Okay.
It's called Devolution by
Devolution?
Devolution.
Okay.
Like evolution.
Got it.
Devolution.
Yeah. Got it.
With Max Brooks. And so he wrote World War Z, which was about the zombies. I'm not a big zombie person. And this is about Sasquatch.
Oh, is
So
it,
it's like the
is it
opposite.
sci-fi?
No.
No. Okay, because I'm not a big fan of sci-fi, but
And I would tell you, so there's no genre that
shy away from.
Well, if it's good, it doesn't matter the genre.
Okay.
If it's a good story, if it's compelling and this could technically be just a tiny bit sci-fi because Sasquatch isn't real.
Okay. I mean, I'm going by your recommendation. I'm going to get a whole list from you.
It's a cast of characters.
Yeah.
So the voices are read, so you're not trying to discern or you're not annoyed by when a female voice is doing the male character.
Right.
Joe says blah. And you're like, and
okay.
they're doing, and I'm making fun of it. And they do a good job most of the time. But a lot of times it's like, I'm not an actor. I'm not wanting this to be,
Yeah.
But Devolution is a cast of characters. So first of all, it's a great story. It's it moves pretty rapidly, and it's read by a cast of characters. So you don't have to guess or try to interpret, because sometimes you can get lost in listening if the voices aren't enough.
Sounds
it's
like
who's talking.
Yeah, sounds like a show. Like you're watching a show, but
Yes.
you're not watching it. You're listening to it.
You're listening to it.
Yeah.
And people will often say that Robyn and I sound exactly alike on the radio, so they can't tell which of us they're
You do
speaking.
sound similar.
Yeah, and it's so funny because she's from Virginia, and I think she has that beautiful, lilting, like Southern twang a little bit.
You
And
both sound great, by the way.
Oh,
you
thank
have
you.
great radio voices.
Oh, good, thank you. Well, I joke that I have a terrible singing voice. So whenever I sing, people tell me, like, who sings this?
Yeah.
Let them continue. Don't you sing that now. Don't ruin that.
I do too, but I think I sound really great.
I think I sound fantastic.
Yeah. I love a good karaoke.
Yeah. Oh, do you really?
Oh my gosh. That is like
I won't karaoke.
that is like my absolute like let loose, like stress reliever to just go sing karaoke somewhere.
Really?
And if I can't get there and I'm feeling it, I'll do it right in my own kitchen.
Really?
Yeah.
I will sing in my bathroom because I think the acoustics.
Yeah.
And I can almost feel like I can hit a key.
Yeah.
But I've told this story on the radio before, but I'll tell you, I went to a public school where we had no music education, and then I went to a private school at 5th grade.
Okay.
So I had no music education ever. Never notes on a page, no idea what anyone's talking about. I all of a sudden go and I have a nun standing over me like, you're not hitting C.
So was this like singing, or was this playing an instrument?
Singing.
Okay, I wouldn't even know
Because
what that meant.
they didn't even put me in front of an instrument because I couldn't sing.
Yeah, remind me to say I have a kind of a funny
Okay.
music story
All right.
to add.
So
To add to yours.
and this is my like joke about childhood, right?
Yeah.
You're relying on the adults, right? And so they're like, you're not singing C, and in my head I'm like, I don't even know what I don't even know
No,
what
I
you're
wouldn't
talking
know.
about.
I wouldn't know what that
You're
is.
showing me bubbles on a page.
Yeah, yeah.
You're talking about letters,
Mhm.
and now you're trying to translate them into my voice.
Mhm.
So I failed music.
Mhm.
So I was great in school.
Sometimes students with dyslexia, that's something they have trouble with, reading musical notes.
Okay,
Just
if
saying.
they had been
Just a
taught
segue.
ever first.
Yeah, yeah. Just saying. That might have to be explicitly. You weren't explicitly taught.
So I had never seen music
Yeah, yeah.
written on a page. Right? So they give me an F, and then they tell the note with my F is she's tone deaf.
F, and you've probably gotten straight A's all the time.
My family did not know what to do with me.
Okay.
So
I
here
have,
they
I
are.
have a very similar
Story, right?
Very similar.
So I said to my parents,
Yeah.
I want to learn an instrument because in my head, everybody who learned an instrument could sing.
Okay. Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
in my head, I was like, when they're playing C on the piano, they're hitting, I don't know if that's a C. It's probably not a C, right?
I wouldn't know.
They're
Could say
matching
anything.
it.
Yeah.
So there's some correspondence. So I said, I want to learn to play an instrument. My parents said, you're tone deaf. You'll never learn an instrument. And so that became you're incapable, you're tone deaf. You would never learn this. So, hey, get invited on a radio station. Really? Because my voice is horrendous because nobody wants me to,
Sing.
and not only just the singing piece of it,
Yeah.
but I grew up with parents where children were seen and not heard.
Mhm.
Your voice is a problem. What are you saying? Stop it. Shut up. Go read in another room. Aren't you
Don't you-
supposed to be outside?
Yeah. Don't you have a book?
That you could read quietly by
Yeah,
yourself in
by
the corner?
yourself. Do you have something to color?
So I cannot hear. I cannot hear
I can
enough.
kind of see. I've
we
got
were
a
sound.
picture of your upbringing. It's kind of similar to mine. Maybe it's the only child.
It's similar to a lot of people.
At that time.
That time.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell me your story.
So speaking of music, my mother gets involved. My poor mother. I'm getting ready to go to college, and they bring me, to the orientation the day you're supposed to sign up for all your courses. Now, I never had any interest in. I mean, I was shy. I was way more shy than I am now as a kid. So no, karaoke wasn't happening back then, but now it does. But didn't have any interest in, singing, chorus, or an instrument of any kind. My mother was always like, "Oh, I want you to play the piano." I'm like, "No, I don't want to." So anyway, we get to college and we're signing up for the courses, and it was like, I'm gonna make myself sound very old, but it was a time where the computers were just coming out,
Yes.
and you had those that floppy disk where you had to change. So I was like, oh, okay, this is the new thing. Of course, it was all filled, so that was like an elective. So now I have to pick this other elective, and I'm down to minimal choices. And one of the choices was piano, piano 101. And I could see my mother. She's like, "Oh, this is finally, my daughter's going to learn the piano. This is my greatest, I really
Dream for her."
dream. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'll sign up. So I signed up for the piano, thinking, okay, whatever. So at first class I go to the building, and there's there's literally 6 of us in a circle, and we each have a keyboard. And all of a sudden, a demonstration, he demonstrated how to play these particular notes. I'm watching. I have no clue. Obviously, every person took this class because it was easy A. So
If they know how to read music.
if they know how to read music, but they probably took piano before. Who knows? This is, So he's doing this, and I don't even think we had the notes in front. I don't even remember if they had notes in front of us. We were supposed to play by ear, whatever. So I would be sitting there, and I'm sweating now. I am oh my God, what am I gonna do? So they would play. Each person had to do it by themselves. So it's kind of related to calling a student with a reading disability to read out loud. This is how I can relate to it. I was like, oh my God. So now it's coming to me, and I would be like, ding. I would press any key. I would press any key. Every time I was like, and then so it came to the point I went 2 or 3 times. Same thing would happen, and the professor, he wasn't helping me, or maybe he wasn't. I was just so outside of my mind that I couldn't do it. So and it wasn't something I could practice. I had other things to do. I wasn't going to seek out a
piano at my
keyboard.
house.
It wouldn't help me anyway. This is a 1 credit elective. So I stopped going, and I was a freshman, and I didn't know at the time that you could withdraw from a class within certain. So I just stopped going. So here comes my grades, F. And I'm like, and it brought my whole grade point down,
Yeah.
average down for like the rest of the 4 years. Like I had to struggle to keep it up. And
I'm
I
not
always,
going to become loudy.
yeah, and I missed it. I missed it by 1 point.
I know exactly why.
Yeah. And I'm like, listen, Mom. I always blame my mother. I was like, you wanted me to take it. It wasn't her fault.
No.
Oh my gosh. But I was like, "Ding."
Well, it's so funny because at some point, my whole theory is your childhood is your childhood.
Yeah.
The family you're born into is your family you're born. And at some point, as an adult, you take control of your own life.
Right.
Right. So I go to have piano lessons because I'm an adult.
Yeah. You're
whatever
going
I
out and you're
want.
getting a little
And
outside
let
of
me
your
tell you, it
comfort
was
zone.
just as traumatic as it was as a child. And I'll tell you why. Because the song is God Bless America.
Okay.
And I know God Bless America,
Mhm.
singing it my whole life, right?
Mhm.
But on the piano, as I'm trying to play it,
Mhm.
in the, so I'm just learning C, D, E, F, G.
Okay.
I'm just learning how to make my fingers
Yeah.
do the thing.
coordination. Yeah, that's something right
But
there.
I'm not doing it to the pace. So I am hitting all the keys, just not in the pace. And the teacher says to me, day one, first 30 minutes. You have heard the song before, right? I said, totally. I don't know how to make the words on the page and my hands do the way it's supposed to play in my voice.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that was like
I'm trying my best.
pretty much the end of, I got one criticism and then I went to a different teacher because I think I did 3 with her and she was drinking after my sessions. I'm sure she was drinking because she was like, you know, I teach 7-year-old kids and they learn. I don't know what this broad is doing in here, but I'm going to have some alcohol when she leaves.
Yeah.
So then I got this Russian woman who would tap on the thing so I could press the key to her.
To her beat.
And then I thought, you know what? This is a dream I'll deal with later because you're supposed to practice so many minutes a day. I've got a life and a job. And so the keyboard sits in a guest room someday to be played.
Okay.
Someday. Because it's every once
I have
in a
no
while.
desire.
Every once in a while.
Brings back bad memories.
I love the music.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to create the music.
I'm fascinated by people can do it. Yeah.
I love it, but not happening anytime soon.
No.
I also love other languages.
Me too. I'm not good with it either.
And I think it's because I wasn't introduced to it before sophomore year, junior year in college, high school. So I didn't have any second language. Then I had Latin, but you don't speak Latin.
Yeah. But
And then you're a self-conscious 15-year-old going, you know, in class in front of your other 15-year-old friends.
oh my gosh.
And then you're being corrected. Like, and I wanted to take French, and my mother's like,
Yeah.
the whole country is speaking Spanish,
Right.
and you're not learning French.
right.
But
She
I
has a point.
think she has a very good point, what I hate when she has a good point. But
I took French.
but
That was hard.
the senior year, they went to France to practice their French. That's
yeah.
why I wanted to learn French.
Yeah.
And I thought it sounded beautiful.
Yeah. I had trouble both with music. Well, I only had that one experience. French was hard for me, especially when we got to the conversation part of it.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
It's
so-
another grade I wasn't very good in.
Yeah, so I wanted to speak French, and I think I was so resentful. I was never going to learn Spanish because it wasn't French. And I remember I had this friend, and we had a lot of classes together, and then she would be going off to French, and I would be going off to Spanish.
Yeah.
I would be like,
Oh, could have been me.
you know, you don't roll your tongue enough. Like, I
Yeah,
just
oh my
remember
gosh.
being,
Self-conscious.
I'm sweating right now.
Yeah, thinking about it. I know.
I'm sweating
can
and
feel
rolling
it.
my arms.
It comes right back. The feeling you have in that moment.
And there are these stories across the country, across the world, right? And isn't it funny how, and I think about this like in terms of dyslexia, like you have the struggle, and if people don't catch it and help you with appropriate help,
Appropriate intervention.
you're just sweating the rest of your life.
Yeah.
just-
And you're compensating, and you're maybe a little bit, you're self-conscious, and and
Yeah.
it plays a factor for sure.
So you come to Nashua more than one day or one day a week?
Yeah, I come up one day a week. So I'm myself. I'm in in Barrington. So I'm down in the, I guess that's called the Seacoast area. My husband and his family are from New Hampshire. My brother-in-law, who's Mason, found somebody who knows him today. Exciting. He lives. They live in the same town. So when we were coming up this way, I have a grandchild, so I was like, I can't be in New Jersey. I got to be up closer. So anyway, that brought me to Barrington. We've been here. It went fast. Like we've been here a year, and so I retired. I had enough years in. I retired from my other position, but I wasn't I miss teaching. So, but I did want to. The three things that I love the most are I loved teaching college. I taught a graduate program through Fairleigh. The teacher training program was a graduate program. I loved working with teachers. I love coaching teachers in the classroom. I like to kind of just help them, like just help them, guide them. I love encouraging them. I feel like I'm always learning, but I feel like I have a good knowledge base, especially for some young teachers who are unsure of strategies and things like that. So I love doing that, and I also still love working with the kids, and I love tutoring the children using Orton Gillingham. So when I got here, I had like a little college thing going. I was lucky enough to secure something there, but I was like, all right, I miss working with the kids. So it was in the fall, and my son was home, and I was on the computer. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put a little blurb together, put it on the local Facebook page, and just advertise myself for like tutoring. I'm available for tutoring. And I was just kind of going online looking for an example, right? And the Indeed popped up, and something popped up called Literacy Learning Solutions. Orton Gillingham certified teacher needed. I was like, oh, that's me. So I like right on the spot, I just uploaded my resume, thinking, oh, they're never gonna call me back. Next day, I got a call back from these two lovely ladies, Holly and Angie, and their mother-daughter duo, and they have this tutoring center called Literacy Learning Solutions here in Nashua, and I have 6 kids now that I work with. So I come up once a week, spend an hour, which I don't mind, listen to podcasts or music, and I'm loving it. The students I work with are fantastic. I'm really enjoying it. So
do they tutor just for dyslexia, or do they tutor for a number of things?
So the students that come, some are diagnosed with dyslexia, some aren't, but they also help with writing, math, so there's other things, and they also have like tutors that go out into the school. So if a student gets classified through child study team, and they find that they would benefit from the Orton Gillingham approach, they have teachers that go out to the school to do that if the school doesn't have somebody on staff to provide that. So they're on Broad Street in Nashua.
Excellent. So for everyone who might think that they need
a little extra.
Yeah, a little bit extra.
And if anyone's in the Barrington area, I'm also available if you want to contact me.
Awesome. And then you brought 2 books.
I brought 2 books. One is called Proust and the Squid by Marianne Wolfe, and it's the story of science and the reading brain. And it's just it's the way it's written is really cool. So it's like she uses a little metaphor of Proust and the Squid. Oh, sorry, I keep hitting that thing. And the other is Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz, and it's great for parents if they're having questions about the signs, what it is, ways to go about finding a diagnosis or screening, or any. It kind of answers a lot of questions. And then the last I can't recommend enough is the International Dyslexia Association website. They have so many resources on there if you're looking for any answers.
And then we have the Learning, what name the Learning Center again on Broad Street?
Learning Literacy Solutions.
We have Learning Literacy Solutions. And we also have this Dyslexia Center here in
the
Nashua.
The Dyslexia Center in Nashua, yes. Right in Fairleigh Dickinson, where I worked with the Masons also, with the centers there. I think there's one in Maine. My brother-in-law, I think, is affiliated with that through the Masons, the one in Maine. And then I think there's also one in Rochester. I think there's 3, which I didn't realize. I honestly didn't realize till recently.
Yeah.
So,
well, I want to thank you for
this
coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so glad we ran into one another.
Yes.
You fun ladies at Baubles and Lace.
And your outfit from Baubles
Yes,
Lace?
I was like,
That's
I
amazing.
have to wear the outfit. I was styled. Like the woman was like, you got to wear these shoes and this belt and this and this. I was like, okay.
So we'll take a picture and post that up.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening to another episode of Lisa and Robyn on the mic without Robyn. And we are on WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM. You can always watch, stream, and listen on WSMN.live. Until next week, enjoy the spring equinox.
Oh, yes.
And have a fantastic week.
WSMN 95.3 FM, Nashua.